guys, what's going on? This is Roth. I'm here with Eric. Talk a little Game of Thrones, our Game of Thrones show.
The House of Black and White was this week's episode.
Yes. So we're going to talk about full spoilers for this week's episode, episode 2. If you haven't seen it, of season 5. Thank you. Very specific. No. He always catches me up and fills in the blanks. So we're going to talk about that. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Come back, chat with us. The pros, the cons, the all of it.
Yes.
Are you ready? Spoilers ahead. Let's dive in and talk a little bit about presence in the form of serpents.
Presence in the form, I was like, where is she going with this?
Where are you going with this?
Presence in the form of...
I actually love that as a threat. It's kind of badass.
It is. Hey, snakes. They're a powerful image. They have a lot of meaning.
Yes.
We were talking...
And they certainly have a lot of meaning in the culture in Dorne. Let's get specific about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Cersei got a gift,
right,
of sorts from the people in Dorne. There was a serpent that was, like, what had they done to? Is it like a taxidermist?
I don't know. It was very creative.
And with Myrcella, her daughter's necklace on a fang, which was clearly, as she said to Jaime, a threat.
And here's where we were talking before about the fact that. You have to keep in mind, Myrcella existing, I bet a lot of casual viewers of the show forget that there is a daughter, that Joffrey had a sister, because there's so many characters.
Right.
We saw her early on, but she was never a focus.
Right.
She was kind of, you might have even not realized who she was exactly when she was there.
Right, and the people also, I think, maybe forget that before Joffrey died, that now Tyrion and Cersei always had static. They did not get along, but the real break in their relationship is Tyrion had Myrcella sent to Dorne, and he did it to protect her. Because war was coming to their doorstep.
Right.
But her mother did not take it that way. Cersei did not take it that way.
She takes everything badly that Tyrion does.
She was displeased.
Yeah.
To say the very least, and she is even more displeased now.
And now, of course, now there's some static with Dorne because of what happened last season with the Viper in the Mountain.
Yeah.
And, their sort of champion being killed as he was, who was already there on a mission of vengeance. And now they have something very valuable. They have, a potential heir to the throne again. If something happened to Tommen, she would now be, with Joffrey dead, that she
would be an heir to the Iron Throne.
Right.
And again, as everybody has pointed out in the show, with all of her flaws and many, many, many that they are, she loves her children. Cersei loves her children, and she loves Myrcella. So that means that she is a powerful asset for anyone that wants to hurt her, wants to hurt Cersei.
And then you bring Jaime into the mix, which is interesting because Jaime has yet he obviously has his love for his sister and he loves Tyrion, but he always was distanced from his kids.
He has love for his sister.
Right. His kids who are supposed to be his nieces and nephews, but we've never seen any real interaction with them, and yet here he is now being tasked by Cersei to go get our daughter.
Yeah, and it's a powerful moment, I think, and the evolution of their relationship, as twisted as this is, I really have so much compassion for him because he is like that guy or woman, anybody in a relationship that's truly in love with the other person, and the other person is just not appreciating them.
Right.
And
it's his sister.
And it's his sister, which is disturbing, I know.
Yeah.
But
you kind of forget sometimes, and then you remember.
And then you remember and you want to throw up a little bit. Yeah. But it's his twin. But he really loves her.
He does.
He really loves her. He will do anything for her. And as much as he's on a mission, I think, now to rescue his daughter, he wants to rescue his own image.
He wants to prove himself to Cersei. Yeah. Right now, because as far as we've seen and know, he's probably kind of pushed aside, those are my kids, because he could never acknowledge it publicly.
Yeah, because they would die for it, as he says.
Yeah. And so, but yes, he maybe does want to prove himself to Cersei here. And that was interesting because then he went to Bronn, which I really liked because last season we did get Bronn kind of training him to retrain him on using a sword with his left hand.
Yeah.
And those were really fun scenes, but it didn't kind of have a payoff.
And now it does.
And now it does, to see them working together again. Because Bronn's great, but with Tyrion gone, he doesn't really have a purpose. we liked the Jaime Bronn dynamic, so it's kind of cool to see these two characters have a team-up mission.
Yeah, and they were sort of planting the seeds. I mean, they were finding a way to keep using Bronn in the show, which I think is again a big difference between the show and the books. Is that when you have a character like that that's such a fan favorite, and you can keep using them, then you want to.
Right.
So it's a very dangerous mission that they're on, as we know, because we've seen a little bit about what's happening in Dorne.
Right.
Let's talk about that a little bit and sort of the different perspectives about how to handle the issue of what happened with the Viper and having this asset.
I mean, again, it's how everything, it's all a house of cards or dominoes, if you will. And the Mountain won that fight, as we all remember, but there are consequences.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have this girl who is so valuable, both as a possible heir to the throne, but then personally, Cersei, again, she is, that mother lion and will do anything to protect her children. This is crucial now for her. And, you kind of feel like Cersei is barely holding it together. And if she lost another kid, that might be the final thing for her. And
mentioned in this episodes were, and I believe it was mentioned last season, we won't talk too much about it, but mentioned in this episode are the sand snakes. Those might be cool. Those might be cool. That might be something. Well, I think we can say who they are because it was mentioned last season.
Yeah.
Those are his daughters. Who are not going to be too happy about their dad dying. We'll see, potentially, we don't know. But the point is there's danger afoot there. And then she's skipping in the gardens. Marcella blindly skipping around, not knowing.
Blondly and
blindly skipping around, not knowing that her very life is on the hook.
Yeah.
So a lot of tension there. Let's talk a little bit about the wall, what was going on at the wall.
Big thing there. I mean, actually a really interesting moment where Stannis said, you can stand as Jon Stark.
Yeah.
And that had a lot of meaning. I mean, especially on this show, where this show is all about undercutting expectations and your traditional paradigms and your traditional hero's journey. All that being said, Ned Stark, who seemed to be the big hero of the show, got killed.
Yeah.
Robb Stark, who seemed to be take up his dad's mantle as the hero of the show, got killed. Jon's kind of all we have left of a traditional hero. He's still not doing what we think. He still did not, leave and go join Robb. And I'll avenge Dad together. He didn't leave when Robb got killed.
Yeah.
But when that was offered to him, it was interesting because it was like the Stark name has meaning, has this noble, heroic force on a show that's about a lot of unheroic, unnoble people.
Well, and I think that's the thing about the Starks, so including Jon, is that he will make the noble decision, and he did. The
most Stark thing Jon could do was reject being a Stark.
That is the most Stark thing Jon could do. It's true, because if he were to accept it, it actually would have been more about his own ego and fulfilling a lifelong dream for himself. But no, he is his father's son. In the sense, the man that raised him was a man of integrity, and he would have said, you made a vow. If you made a vow, you stick to it.
Yeah.
So that is exactly what he did. Whether that's the best thing for him or the realm remains to be seen, and I don't know, you know. But that's what he did. Certainly, my gut instinct was to want him to come on.
Right. Because and meanwhile, because Stannis, while not
North needs you.
North needs you, right? Because while Stannis is not the most likable guy, he does seem to have better intentions than a lot of these other characters do. And the fact that he's like, hey, you can help lead the North again.
Yeah.
And there's a wish fulfillment on our part as the audience. It's like, that'd be awesome, right?
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. And in a very different way, Stannis is also a man of unflinching integrity.
Yeah.
In a much harder way. Much more unflinching, but he is, and so I think they see something in one another, right? Especially I think Stannis sees something in Jon, and I think he even respects the decision, as much as it's not what he wants him to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting. You take a vow, you keep it. Let's talk a little bit about somebody else who made a harsh decision this week. Daenerys had to make a difficult choice. And I don't know that it was the best one.
Certainly, when we're talking about politics and perception, that might be a bad choice.
It was a terrible political move. It was a terrible
because certainly in the moment, I mean, it literally turned the crowd against her and made things dangerous for her in the moment. She could have been hurt or killed if the people hadn't been there to protect her. So she's trying to be unflinching and stick to her code.
Yeah.
But, there's something to be said for bending the rules. And I mean, this goes back to Ned Stark, who was a great man to a fault. And there were times where it's like, dude, you're playing by rules no one else is playing by.
I wrote down bad political move.
Right.
When I was taking notes.
Like, no one will say Ned Stark wasn't a great man, but was he always doing the smart thing? No, because he was like, there were times where it's like, no, you've got to play by the rules that everyone else is playing by.
And I think that the lesson of the show is that even if you have, one of the lessons of the show is that even if you have the best intentions, you sometimes have to make you often have to make a lot of compromises to reach them. Varys understands this, seemingly he understands this. Whatever your intentions are, you can't bulldoze your way to them. And I think that she really, it was a very Ned Stark thing to do. It was a Jon Snow like thing to do, to sort of
this guy broke the rules, broke the law, and I must punish him.
I'm going to cut off his head because I'm going to let you know that the law is the law and it applies to everyone, whether you like them or not. But she just took over the city.
Yeah.
She's rapidly changing the culture that has been there for years and years and years. You have got to do that a little bit delicately, not just because it's the smart thing to do, because in a way it's the right thing to do. You can't just force your will on other people to quite that degree. Even if she had to jail him, I don't think public execution was the right move. And the point, it was nice to see her dragon come by and give her like, "Hey, Mom, it's going to be all right, though."
Yeah,
Drogon.
He did a little stop. Yeah.
I feel like Drogon showed up just to sort of, he felt her need. This is my interpretation.
Gave her hope for that moment.
Yeah. My total interpretation was that he felt her need, and he came just to let her know, "I'm still here. But see ya."
I might go kill some more kids. I might go burn some more kids.
I might go burn an entire village, but I do love you, Mama.
Now let's talk about Sansa meeting Brienne, because once again, it's always a meaningful moment where we have big characters meet who've never met. Yeah. And there was, it was a little, you had to go with the coincidence of like, they're all in the same inn at the same time, but it was still thrilling just to have it happen. It was a
very sort of lost moment for me in that way of like massive coincidence.
We're all connected.
We're all connected. Like, oh, look who's, and you even had a little bit last week, like, look who's going down the road.
Right.
I'll be honest, those do throw me out a little bit because I'm like, no, it's a big Westeros.
Yeah.
But poor Brienne just keeps getting rejected by
these
Stark
girls. Are not having it, right?
They're not having it with her. Which I think, again, with Arya, we had that moment where you saw how far she had gone, that she would reject a sense of safety. I think Sansa is more rejecting, like, you done me wrong, we're done. I think she's sort of like, if you're a party, sort of to the people that have hurt my family, then she feels hardened to me. That's what I took out of that moment.
I mean, I think it's that. I think it's complicated because I also think it is the devil you know thing, and that she's kind of figured out Littlefinger and what he wants and what he's about. And Brienne, she didn't know they were in the same place. So I shouldn't say they've never been together. They were both at King's Landing together, but they never had like meaningful interaction. And she doesn't know her like her mom knew her. And so it's ethereal. There's too much danger there given everything she saw happen in King's Landing. How does she not know she's just going to bring me back to Cersei for something horrible? Another horrible thing.
I think you're right, and I think that there's a part of her that in the training, for lack of a better word, that Littlefinger is giving her, she values it.
Yeah.
I think she appreciates its worth. He's been a survivor in a really big way. He's been able to rise up from nothing and thrive in this world.
Yeah.
And if he can do that, then she can learn from him about how to do the same thing. I think that's where she's maybe coming from. On the whole, though, I was looking, there were a lot of mixed sort of responses to the first episode. We're on the second one now. Are you liking the trajectory of the season?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's where we're at with the story. I think once the war actively is sort of over, it's a little more, and this, again, the books had this in a bigger way almost, a little more meandering because everyone is so separated still, which has always been the case, but there's not as much forward momentum about this battle is coming, this must be defended.
Yeah.
There is the ethereal, there is the threat of the White Walkers and things out there. But I'm still very much enjoying the show. We haven't talked about the title of the episode though. Yeah. We haven't talked about Arya and her her by the end, it looks like she's going to have a new home, maybe.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it very much looks like she came there for a reason, was initially rejected. But in the end, he seemed to be willing to take her in.
Yeah. And I mean, I did like the little glimpse of her on her own out there. Don't mess with Arya. Don't think you can take anything from Arya.
No, she'll kill your bird. She'll
Like,
kill you.
I mean, in fact, Jaqen showing up in the background there in his other guise and scaring those kids off probably saved their lives, or at least one of them, at least that leader who was going to try to mess with her.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Save some lives
Yeah.
in that moment. I think that she is absolutely one of the most fascinating characters on the show. She is a survivor.
Oh, yeah.
Above anybody else, she's been able to survive circumstances that I certainly know I wouldn't be able to survive. But I'm really excited to see the inside of that world, of his world, and what that's going to mean for her and the changes that will unfold.
As am I.
All right, guys, those are sort of our thoughts. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. And All Things Game of Thrones is on IGN, but we're still going to keep talking about Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this. This is a question I put out to Twitter. So often we talk about sort of the pairings on this show. So far, we're just a couple of episodes in, but we've got a couple of pairings. We've got Brienne and Podrick.
Yeah.
We've got Jaime and Bronn now, and we have, of course, Tyrion and Varys. So who are your favorites?
Of like the current ones,
Of the
right?
current ones,
not in the
not
history of the show.
Yeah.
Right now, the potential for Bronn and Jaime is cool. I am really liking the Brienne and Podrick one, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something, it's just like the strong, it's a kind of classic thing, right? The strong stoic character and the fool.
Yeah.
But it works, and Podrick's very lovable and his just like trying to be a good squire.
Yeah.
Trying to like help out, and Brienne, kind of trying to reject him, but then she's got some endearment for him you feel underneath. It was great when, the scene where he was ineffectually throwing the rock at the guy, and then she shows, "Duck, Podrick," and takes out those two guys.
She's so heroic. She is such a classic vision of a knight in some ways, in terms of her behavior and her sort of stance and view on the world and her role in it. It's really interesting to put that sort of, I'm going to say juxtaposition, I guess, but as someone that isn't your classic image of a knight, but she acts like one, even with Podrick. But yeah, you got to love Podrick, man.
Yeah.
He's just so sweet.
The prostitutes loved Podrick.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Right.
Everybody's loving a little Podrick.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to more of Bronn and Jaime. I feel like that could end up being a great one. But, I got to say, like, to me, just because those two characters are so fascinating and so nuanced, and they are not kind of easy to read, Varys and Tyrion, I just can't get enough of seeing them together still. Just because, again, like, I feel like you've got who Podrick is, you get who Brienne is. With them, you're like, I don't know, fully who you are.
They're two extremely intelligent characters, but yeah, they both have their guard up. Varys even more for us. Like, we know what Tyrion's about a lot more, obviously, at this point.
We do, but I think that he's in a moment of crisis where he doesn't know who he is.
Right. This is his most vulnerable. He's out there. He's a wanted man.
Yeah.
And those characters always played well off each other when they had their moments at King's Landing. But it is cool to take them away from everyone else and really see just the two of them and their conversations. Two great performances, too, obviously.
Yeah.
So when the two of them are just sitting there talking, even if Tyrion's drunk or puking,
especially when Tyrion's drunk and puking.
Yeah, it is really cool to see the two of them bounce off each other like that.
And I also like the fact that Varys is trying to tell him who he is, remind him of who he is, and that Tyrion, to his credit, was honest about the fact that he really does like power, and that Varys is pushing him to a point, because he's positioning him like a pawn, as he does the rest of the world, but pushing him to rise above his current state of despair. So it's pretty interesting to me.
I also do have to say I'm fascinated by the Sansa Littlefinger dynamic, because
absolutely.
It's twisted, like the whole projection of like, I loved your mother and she's dead, so now I'm gonna love you,
but I'm also gonna kind of raise you.
As my daughter, but I lust for you, and you're my protege in villainy.
And I'm also going to kind of use you as a pawn.
Right.
There's a lot of layers.
But I do want to protect you. It's all messed up. But then the fact that, okay, of course, it's fascinating to see Dark Sansa, we've joked about it before, and where she's going. And the fact that the more she's around Littlefinger and the more you sense that she's understanding both how this world works and how Littlefinger works, the more you sense that she could be manipulating him if she's not yet.
Yeah.
That she's kind of figuring out how to.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that it's like, and that she's probably more and more realizing that at a certain point she could get him to do things
for her.
Well, yeah.
Well, the moment that I'm looking forward to with them, if we ever get it, and I don't know that we will, is when she really is at the point that she thinks she can get him to do things that he doesn't necessarily want to do, and how he would respond to that. Watching them actually get to the point where they're equals and they can parry, I think would be a great thing. But yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic. It is so messed up. All right.
I called her Hot Topic Sansa on Twitter last night. I'm sticking with it.
Hot topics. All right. Let us know which pairings you like so far this season, not in total. That may be another conversation at some point. Make sure to let us know in the comments below. Finally, I just want to touch on, we talked about this before a little bit, but if Jon Snow made the right decision. Now, we know why he made the decision. He is being Ned Stark's son. He is saying, I am a man of integrity. I made a vow. I am going to stick to it. But ultimately, do we think it's the right thing for him to have done?
I mean, in the big picture sense, not necessarily, because the realm needs help. And the Lannisters, no matter, right now it's Tommen is the king, but it's really Cersei pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And so you just feel like you want to get the Lannisters out of there, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's hard not to feel like, I don't know, if he could go back, if he could reclaim, his family's home, if he could reclaim the North, wouldn't that be good for the people? So yeah, it's like you understand completely, again, him being his father's son, why he's not going to do that. But I don't know. I think like couldn't he maybe help people? Couldn't Lord Jon Stark be a benefit to more people than Jon Snow at the Wall? I don't know. I
mean, I think that ultimately it's so interesting because oftentimes it's the people that should be leading that are not interested in it, and that's just true in life as well. Although he is leading, but he's leading at the Wall, as he was sworn to do. The more that she manipulates, takes control of the small council and is moving pieces around, the more you want somebody to come and rally who can be a rallying point. Stannis cannot be a rallying point. People don't like him.
Stannis puts his foot down and he's like got strength, but he doesn't have there's nothing about him that's inspiring.
There's nothing inspiring. He is not somebody that can call different factions together because people do not like him. And so even then, in terms of the world of politics, I do think that even if he weren't just more inherently equipped to lead because he's a man of integrity, just his name, his likableness would be a rallying point, but alas, he said no. Campaign posters with Stark and Jon and Ghost.
Come on.
My vote. You've got my vote, Jon. Let us know if you think that Jon made the right decision in the comments below. At this point in the podcast on Sprockets, we are going to talk about the books. So if you have not read them, do not want to talk about them, we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week as we delve into some more direct comparisons here between this episode and where the books were.
We've talked about this previously. They're making some big differences this season. The first of which is Sansa, being on the move the way that she is. Not the first of which, but one big one is that Sansa's on the move, and she met Brienne.
It's funny because Brienne now continues to have these encounters she didn't have in the books. And we've already talked about the absence of Lady Stoneheart, which became Brienne's kind of big thing. So with that gone, it's like, okay, what is Brienne doing? She's trying to get the Stark girls back. Now, unfortunately for her, and actually kind of quickly, that's a failure. She found them both. Again, maybe a little too coincidentally, but she found them both, and they both rejected her, which is kind of sadly funny. But
it really is. It's like, I charge you with this,
It's interesting because it does take out, look, the books have a lot of traveling and like we're trying to find this and do this, and especially in the fourth and fifth book get very drawn out. So I don't know, I kind of do like the idea, even though it involves some big coincidences, of getting it out of the way. She succeeded in the first part, finding them. She failed in the second because they said no, both of them.
And I think they're by necessity accelerating a few different things, right? Because they need to have a propulsive feel to what's happening. We need to feel like things are really moving forward as the audience. I feel for Brienne, but honestly, I don't think it would have served this series to just see her and Pod wandering for several episodes trying to find her. I just don't think that gives us much as an audience. If she's going to reject her, she's going to reject her. Let's get it out of the way and move on to other things.
Yeah, I mean, it does give us interesting nuance into both Stark girls because of the fact that both of them rejected her, and we already have had the conversations about it. But yeah, why is that where they are at? And then now, of course, it is. What happens to Brienne next is a question that we don't really know the answer to because they haven't introduced Lady Stoneheart.
Right.
Will they? Is that the next big thing for Brienne?
I think it must be.
Yeah?
I do. Yes.
All right.
I say yeah. I mean, I want it to be. I guess is what you're probably hearing in my voice.
I know you want to see Lady Stoneheart.
I do. I unabashedly do.
Yeah.
I just think it's a cool character, man. Also, with Jon and Stannis, that seemed to accelerate a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's again what we're seeing though of them taking the 4th and 5th books and blending them all up. So yeah, that when that happened, and again, I'd have to remind myself exactly when that happened. It just happened more quickly than I expected. Like I remember that happening, but we kind of got past that. But I do think, again, the fact that the producers said before they went into this season that we're going to start to spoil things from the books. I mean, not only are we blending 2 books this season, but I think we're going to get beyond it, which they already have a little bit.
They already have a little bit.
Yeah.
Presumptive, because with Sansa on the move, you have to imagine, okay, they know something about her ultimate fate that we don't know yet.
We know, certainly, well, they do know her ultimate. They know everyone's ultimate fate. But meanwhile, they must have a reason to be like, it's time to move her, to take her somewhere else.
Yeah, and they are driving her towards it, and everyone towards it, a lot faster at this point. I'm fine with the changes so far. Are you?
No, I definitely am. I mean, the other one we should talk about, because we only talked about it in relation to what we thought on the show, but is Bronn and Jaime's excellent adventure or bogus journey to Dorne.
That's yet to be seen.
Which is yet to be seen, but the fact that it's even happening.
No, I mean whether it's bogus.
Oh yeah. Because in the books, neither of them go there. In the books, it's a little bit jarring, as a lot of the 4th and 5th books are, because it's like, hey, here's entirely new characters that you've never seen before in relation to no one. And it was Balin Swan, not Bella Swan, Balin Swan, who is Cersei tasked to get, who again, he'd been in the periphery of the books, but he hadn't anything on the show, and I completely see why they made that decision.
Yeah, because, and we've talked about this before, the reality of a television audience is going to be that if you have characters that you need to follow, characters that you're attached to, it's a much more emotionally fulfilling and dynamic and rich story for Jaime to go after his own daughter, to be trying to win back the love of his sister. And we love Bronn. We just like Bronn, to watch him. He's entertaining.
Honestly does who already was more prominent on the show, but even the books, his stuff with Tyrion's there, but not as big, and then he kind of dissipates, The
stakes are so much higher than if you're following this guy that you don't really care about.
Yeah, a guy we don't know to go meet people we don't know to rescue a girl we barely remember who's played by a new actress.
Yeah.
None
of that really works. You get Jaime and you get Bronn there, and they're in danger. Then suddenly we're invested. It was a smart move to do. I'm glad they did it.
Me too. And even Jaime, because Bronn is there but barely doing anything, and then Jaime, at this point in the books, this is where he was sent kind of to help clean up some of the remnants of the war. But it's nothing huge, and this is more interesting. Yeah, it's way more personal. The go rescue our daughter.
Yeah.
It's just there's better stakes, and I think it's a better end to Dorne. So yeah, this is a change like most of them so far. I'm very happy with.
All right, those are our thoughts. Many thoughts about this week's episode of Game of Thrones. Let us know yours in the comments below. Do go ahead and tweet us questions at EricIGN. I'm at Roth Cornett. Tweet us questions, and we will do our very best to answer them as intelligently as possible.
Maybe.
Doubtful.
No promise.
We're mostly drunk. All right, thanks, guys. And for all things Game of Thrones, keep it locked right here to IGN.